history education student at Illinois State. The past 4 years, I've joined many of you in your protests all around Bloomington Normal. I've even gone to Dwight and Champaign-Urbana with many of you. Now we stand here protesting together in my neighborhood, perhaps the first time ever in this quiet, tranquil piece of land that has been walked on by many protests of any kind. We're closing in on 2 months since George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis by the same people paid for by our tax dollars to protect and serve us, all for a faulty transaction. Breonna Taylor's murders have yet to be charged with their crimes.
That's true.
Bloomington City Council has yet to have any serious discussion among all its members on Black Lives Matter's demands. Instead, Ward 5's own Joni Painter showed us all her true colors over a Facebook post last month, and even WGLT watched in amazement at her public breakdown over something simple. Luckily, we'll be hearing from someone later on this evening who will plan to change that. We've been watching in horror as peaceful protesters nationwide have been tear gassed, beaten, shot at, run over, and even kidnapped by white supremacists with or without government badges. There have been estimated to be around 100 incidents in 2 months wherein peaceful protesters had been agitated to violence from racist domestic terrorists. We're not armed, we're not plowing our cars into people, we're not kidnapping them in unmarked vans with no insignia as to what agency we're representing. What we have are our signs, our shirts, and most of all, our voices. Let's prove to our neighbors we're the farthest from advocating violence. With that said, please allow me to introduce our first speaker today.
I guess it's not going up, so this is how we're going to do this today. How's everybody doing? Well, as I said before, I'm Austin Willis. I'm one of the co-founders of the Next Gen initiative here in town. And I've been thinking the past week or so on what I was going to talk about today. And I thought, well, should I talk about the recent white supremacy issues that we've been having in town? Should I talk about how there's been lynchings happening around the country being classified as suicide? Or should I talk about the tyrannical leadership that we have coming from our Oval Office? Or should I talk about how a lot of them so-called patriots are confusing patriotism with symbolism? Or how Breonna Taylor's killers still have not been arrested?
Wow, that's deep.
Now, what I mean to say by all this is that we've got a multifaceted situation on our hands. This isn't just one problem we're fighting. And I want to ask, what are you passionate about? To move forward in this movement, it's going to take people figuring out what they're passionate about and moving forward. What do you want to see in the future? What do you want our future to look like? Because right now it's starting with us. We all know that the movement is Black Lives Matter, we're based around the black people, but black people, that doesn't end with us. Because on that fateful day when we get what's ours, when we all have our fighting chance finally have our fighting chance to make it in this country, the Latino community might still be fighting.
Right, that's right.
The Native American community undoubtedly will still be fighting. LGBTQ plus community could still be fighting. And black people, I'm here to say today that when we get ours, it's our duty and our children's duties to then keep fighting for the other oppressed peoples. Because it doesn't end with us, it's going to keep going. This fighting going to end today, it's not going to end tomorrow, it's not going to end next year. This is going to keep going and going and going, a lot of us for the rest of our lives. So what I want to say today is, what are you passionate about? Find out what that is and apply yourself. Study it. Learn about it. Figure out how you can apply yourself to become that change, to make that happen in the future. Now, we also got to remember who this fight is against. And I want to remind everyone that it's not against one another. It's against the system.
That's right.
I'm guilty of this myself. Sometimes we got to remember that we are a lot of times wasting our time arguing with uncultured Jim across town over social media. I'm guilty of this myself. As we're wasting time doing that, we could be spending that time figuring out how we're going to apply ourselves more to the movement and get this movement moving. That's what it's all about. So as I leave you today, I'm going to keep it short. We got a lot of speakers. I want y'all to remember a few things. We are true Americans. Don't let nobody tell you otherwise. We are true patriots. This is what patriotism is about. And we are revolutionaries. And the revolution will not be televised. Y chinga la migra.
Afternoon. Mike Matika, but it's a funny name, isn't it?
However he
In the old country, they say
self-identifies.
Mateka. Huh? So, as not in our town, here, proud to be here with you today. As a 67-year-old white man, I want to say I've got a lot to learn. And I've got to learn to listen, and I have to be humble. Because our young people are telling us something. And we need, and I need, to learn not so much to talk, but to learn, to listen, and to find out from the depths of other people's experience what's going on in their lives. And we are in a unique historical moment. And it is a moment where unity is critical, where we don't judge each other across gender, sexual orientation, racial color, class. We're people who have to come together and build a community of caring. Where everybody's got a place, everybody's respected, and everybody can have their full talents. Second thing I want to say is I'm having flashbacks when I look at Portland and I look at Seattle. And as somebody who studies labor history, I'm remembering 1877 in Chicago when 30 people were shot down on the west side of Chicago. I'm remembering 1894 in the Pullman strike when people were shot down in the streets. I'm remembering 1917 when there were machine gun emplacements around the old courthouse in downtown Bloomington. I'm remembering 1919 in the Seattle General Strike when people in the Pacific Northwest took to the streets. Remember 1922 in Bloomington when there were machine gun emplacements around the west side of Bloomington? Yeah. That was all about economic class. And as we look at this, and I appreciate what the young man said before me, it's all intertwined together, and it's all about power. Who has power and who keeps other people down? And our job, our obligation, our passion is to build that place where all people have value and all people are treated equally, and the power of the state is not used to put people down, but the power of the state is the power of us that should be used to enhance our lives. So keep strong. Remember, this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. You know, I was, again, remembering in the 70s, gathering in Bloomington Normal to do this kind of stuff. We got to be here for the long haul because change takes time. If anything Congressman Lewis taught us in his recent passing, we have to be in there persistently every day, pushing it from inside our hearts, changing ourselves, and changing our country. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Can everyone hear me? All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Noah Tang. I'm a U.S. and World History teacher at Bloomington High School. I know it's not enough to add in a little black history here and there to the overall curriculum. Students can see right through some teachers' simple lip service to prominent black figures like Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks. Black history is not just slavery and skip right past to the civil rights movement. Okay? That is unfortunately what most students get in schools around the country today. On the other end of the spectrum, when teachers only prop up the feel-good parts of history, right, in reality, they're doing a disservice to all of their students. Let me say this. Black history is American history.
America. America.
We need our students to learn about the black prosperity of Tulsa and the subsequent white destruction and murder of its residents. We need our students to know the peacefulness of Dr. King, but also his fierce anti-war and anti-capitalist stances. They need to know that Africa is not a country, but a diverse continent with hundreds of cultures and languages whose accomplishments existed long before European colonization and will continue to exist long after it.
Hallelujah.
They need to know about what happened to Emmett Till so they can see it in Trayvon Martin. If students don't know the full American story, the one which includes the uncut black history, they will be uninformed about the issues our society faces today. History is literally just old news. We need to know where we came from to adjust on where we are going. In my classroom, I focus heavily on the historical concept of agency. Agency is a person or a group's capacity to act independently and make their own free choices. Decisions that could change the system. My favorite topic I had the honor to teach is agency of regular people. I spent a couple days this last semester on local history. Bloomington High School's Afro-American Culture Club in 1970. District 87 has been integrated since the 1870s, but 100 years later in 1970, many black students still did not feel at home in their own schools. One star player, Reggie Curry, was threatened to be kicked off the basketball team for sporting an afro. In 1970, the Afro-American Culture Club had a set of demands for the BHS administration. A club photo in the school yearbook, a black studies program, soul food in the cafeteria, more black students on athletic teams regardless of grades or hairstyles, 2 homecoming queens, 1 black, 1 white, and an investigation on school employees to determine racism. These demands were met with increased tensions from the administration and the white students to the point where riot police were called into Bloomington High School to calm things down at the end of the year. By staging class boycotts, by calling on the school board, by doing interviews with the Panagraph, and much, much more, this group of students paved the way for the first African-American person to be ever elected to the school board, and African-American studies at BHS, which still continues today. Students need to know the importance of black history, how people work together to change the systems that oppress them. We all need to know that history isn't over and has a lot that needs to be changed. Black history is American history.
America.
Thank you.
Hey guys, like you said, I'm Gavin Cunningham, and I know there's a lot of issues going on, especially around the Black Lives Matter movement, but I want to specifically talk to the white people here, because there is more than just coming to a rally, taking an Instagram picture, in saying that you're supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. If you're supporting the Black Lives Matter movement, you're not only going to help to make sure that the future is better, but you must reflect on your past. I right now am a recent graduate of Normal West High School. And much like many other white people here, I have reflected on some of what I have said and done in the past and realized that without even realizing it, I was being racist. You cannot change the past. I'm not going to act like I can change the past, but I'm going to make sure that every step, every word in the future of my life is not hurting anyone else and will be for the Black Lives Matter movement. This is included but not limited to saying the N-word in songs, even if you're by yourself. This is important to make sure you're not judging someone walking on the street based off the color of their skin. And this is also important because you cannot say that you are not racist because you have a black grandkid. This is saying that you can be racist if you even have an adopted black kid, if you have an adopted black grandkid, or even if you have a biological child or grandchild that is a person of color. Racism exists in every facet of our society, and if we don't look at it, if we don't confront our past and our past mistakes, what are we gonna do? We're gonna be walking in circles, we're gonna be having rallies here in 10 years, demanding the same exact things that we're demanding now. Black Lives Matter yesterday, they matter today, and we need to make sure they matter tomorrow. How many of you guys are aware of the comedian Michael Che on SNL? Right? He has a comedy sketch on Netflix. And one of the things he says is, why is Black Lives Matter such an issue? Why are people saying all lives matter? He then went to say, after 9/11, never forget. Never forget 9/11, right? But when it comes to Black Lives Matter, it's all lives matter. He started saying, why don't we just say all buildings matter? Right? That's what people are saying. All lives do not matter until black lives are treated the same as white lives. One of the things that we are not taught in our education system is the man by the name of Richard Henry Pratt. Are any of you guys aware of this man? He is not taught in the majority of our education systems. However, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, he started boarding schools for Native Americans to try to be integrated into the European-centric culture. At the time, he was considered progressive. That was okay back then. What ended up happening is Native Americans were not just wiped out, their cultures, their languages, their religions are gone. Last year, the last Chickasaw Native American passed away along with the entire language because this was not kept alive. As white people, we need to not just stand up for ourselves when it comes to wearing a face mask in public. We need to fight for our black brothers and sisters, for the future, and make sure that every one of us can remember that Black Lives Matter, not just today, but also tomorrow. Thank you.
Hi guys.
Hello there.
I've never performed this out loud yet, so bear with me. Black noise, so patient, so poised. We're done waiting, we're done watching, seeing our boys be murdered for holding fake gun toys. 12 years old, rest in peace to Royce. Go to sleep, go to sleep. I can't sleep, some justice would be nice, so I can lie in my bed to be shot in my sleep at night. It's the police, no knock, but Ken didn't know. When your house is broken into, you have to be polite or they will shoot despite compliance. Can you rest in peace, Brianna? Riot! Mama, mama, I can't breathe. George Floyd's mama will never ever get another night's sleep. George, brother, are you resting in peace? Tragedy after tragedy, how many bodies do we stack until these white people know how to act? Why did you shoot me? Kendrick McDade. It's not real, John Crawford III. Mom, I'm going to college, Armando Diallo. I love you too, Sean Bell. And I can't breathe, Eric Garner. And scene. But you see, this is not a book. Unfortunately, this is reality, not a catchy hook, a movie, or a bad dream. We built the land of the free. All we're asking for is the right to breathe. Thank you. Tamir Rice was shot for playing with a toy gun and died at age 12. They pulled up and shot him before the vehicle ever even stopped, giving him no chance to say any last words. His 14-year-old sister then ran to him, and Timothy Lohman, the man who shot her brother dead in front of her eyes, pinned and handcuffed her. The police threatened Tamir's mother with arrest, telling her to calm down after they had told her about the shooting. No one was found guilty. Breonna Taylor was shot in her sleep by police and died at age 26. Police entered the home of Breonna's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, after having the wrong address to a no-knock search warrant. Thinking someone was breaking in, Kenneth fired shots attempting to protect his home. The police then fired 20 rounds, which struck Breonna 8 times. The police arrested her boyfriend for attempted murder of a police officer. Kendrick McDade was unarmed and shot after a fake 911 call and died at age 19. His last words were, "Why did you shoot me?" John Crawford III was shot for holding a BB gun he wanted to purchase in Walmart. He died at age 22. His last words were, "It's not real." Police fired 41 bullets at Armando Diallo after mistaking him for another criminal. He died at age 22. His last words were, "Mom, I'm going to college." Police fired 50 bullets at Sean Bell after his bachelor party, killing him on the day he was supposed to be married. He was about to go home after celebrating his bachelor's party at a club with 2 of his friends. 3 undercover cops approached their car. They had apparently been investigating the club for prostitution rumors. They did not ID themselves. Sean's friend said he thought the man was reaching for a gun. He then panicked and hit the gas, striking one of the officers, which led to the undercover, unidentified police to open fire on these victims, killing Sean at age 22 and severely injuring the other 2 friends just hours before he was supposed to be married. His last words were, "I love you too." Eric Garner was approached by police on suspicion of selling single cigarettes. After saying he wasn't selling them and being tired of being harassed by the police attempted to arrest Garner. Garner, being scared, backed away as policeman Daniel Pontilio put his arms on his shoulders and then proceeded to put him in a chokehold while others helped to tackle and pin him down. They held him like that while Eric began pleading, saying, "I can't breathe," 11 times before losing consciousness. The police held him there for another 7 minutes until the ambulance showed up. Pontilio was fired and no criminal charges were made. When will this end? When will this stop being acceptable? I have one last poem I wrote for you guys that I'm going to end here, but thank you guys so much for coming out. Does fear inspire violence? Or does violence inspire fear? It's queer, the silence before the shots. No one left to hear the bullet shells or the bodies drop. Nobody left except for the cops. Don't shoot. Please don't kill me. Shit, man, I can't breathe. The weight of your hate is crushing me. Brothers and sisters, I beg you, please, for it's not a fair fight when the only guns are held within the hands of the police. A man gets a badge. The badge comes with a gun. But if a man is a bully, then we just armed one. We must stop the violence, I implore. They're decorating the streets with our blood like decor. I know you bastards are in need of a father, but that's no excuse to murder black men and not the pigs to the slaughter. Or a wife, a daughter. I ponder what we can do with our hands up, face down under their boots. Please, 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 do not shoot.
Hi, thanks. So like Chris said, we're right in the middle of Ward 5 right now. And thanks for mentioning that too, what our current alderperson said, that she doesn't think we should be asking in terms of demands for things. She thinks if we want something, we need to ask nicely. So it wrong on so many levels. If you're more concerned with how people are asking for things rather than what they are asking for, all you are doing is getting in the way of the real work that needs to be done, and all you are doing is reinforcing a status quo that needs to change. And y'all know this is a bad status quo already, right? I mean, that article in WGLT that showed all of the Bloomington Police Department's use of force over the past 3 years, 52% of all those incidents were against black residents, despite the fact that black residents only make up 8% of the city's population.
That ain't right.
Not at all. Black pedestrians are 4 times more likely than white pedestrians to get stopped and searched in this town. And we all know that black residents are much more likely to get stopped and searched while driving by the police. This needs to change now. And the first thing that needs to change is the bloated $21 million a year budget of the Bloomington Police Department. Why are we spending that much money on policing when literally the YWCA is right down the road? Y'all know some of the services they provide? They help provide services for survivors of sexual assault. They help formerly incarcerated women reintroduce them into our community. They provide child care for many of the low-income needy families in our community, and they keep elderly folks connected to the community. Why don't we take some of that $21 million and give it to our amazing human service providers, like the YWCA, like PATH, which is doing amazing work to try to deal with homelessness, like Project Oz, which is working with our teenagers in high schools and is a much better alternative to having cops in our schools. And it's not that hard to figure out. When you provide services for people that help them with their everyday needs, when you lift people up, you reduce crime and you reduce the need to even have police in the first place. It's not that hard. And the food desert in West Bloomington is another important need. There's a lot of needs we got. That money could go a long way in this community. And while we're talking about police, can we also acknowledge that there are very few instances when police respond to a call that they actually need to be armed? Anytime you introduce a weapon in those situations, you are turning each and every interaction between a police officer and a resident of this community or any other person into an exchange that could be potentially deadly. We don't need that. Disarm the police.
And they ain't never wearing no mask.
And they don't wear masks enough. That's another major problem. But we do not need our community to be the next community that makes national news because someone was unnecessarily shot and killed by the police. We have seen too many black men, women, and children get murdered by the police simply because they were living their lives when someone, for whatever reason, decided to call the cops on them. That needs to change now, immediately. And when people say that it's too radical or too extreme to talk about defunding or disarming the police, no, it's not. We've tried reform in this community. We established a review board. We've tried de-escalation training, anti-bias training. We've tried body cams and more inclusive hiring practices. It hasn't got us where we need to be in this town. This is the next incremental step in that process because this is a problem that we are going to solve in this community, regardless of what people think. And it's time that people start taking these ideas seriously. And so I just want to wrap up by saying thanks for speaking up, stepping out, marching on the streets. And now let's start electing people to city council that are going to take these priorities and make them a reality in this town. That's why I'm running. That's why I want to reclaim this ward. And I'm going to do everything I can to support the black and brown residents and community members that live here and everywhere in this town, because we need representatives that value them, because too often they are undervalued and neglected by those in power. So we are going to get power And once we have that power, we are going to use it with our actions to show that Black Lives Matter.